Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, Text 42. This chapter is entitled Brahma Stealing the Boys and Calves. As we have discussed, this particular chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam is very intimate, very sacred for all of us, because Srila Prabhupada translated and revealed the ecstasies of his love in these purports during his last weeks with us, during his manifested pastimes in this world. Physically, it's difficult to explain. He was in such a state, he could hardly eat anything. He couldn't sit, he couldn't stand. Devotees would put a little microphone right next to his mouth, and he would, with all his strength, whisper his purports. As Krishna was about to take him to Goloka, he was meditating upon and sharing this pastime with the whole world for all time to come. This chapter was his last contribution of his life mission of giving purports and translations. And what a inconceivable, incredible pastime this is. Lord Brahma, who's speaking today's verse, he came to the realization of the supreme greatness of Vrindavan Dham through this incredible experience. Sanatana Goswami, he tells us that Krishna's unlimited, supreme, attractive qualities bewilder everyone in Vrindavan. Bewilder them in such a way that they see Krishna as their friend, their child, their lover. Sanatana Goswami reveals to us that beyond that, the love of the residents of Vrindavan bewilder Krishna. Krishna's Madan Mohan, which means even the most powerful, deluding, hypnotizing, mystifying force of this creation Madana, is bewildered by Krishna. We know that story on bank of Yamuna, when Madana, Kamadev, wanted to test Krishna. And with his most powerful of flower arrows, he aimed at Krishna. And we don't have to explain the details of how Madana or Kamadev bewilders people in this world. But when he aimed at Krishna, seeing Krishna's beauty, he became so bewildered that he fell unconscious. But Srimati Radharani, who is the Vladini Shakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, she bewilders even Krishna by the power of her love. And she is Vrindavan Eshwari. She is the queen, the presiding influence in everything in Vrindavan. And the prem, the love of all the devotees in Vrindavan bewilders Krishna. How is he bewildered? He's bewildered in the sense that by his own free will, he becomes dependent on the love of his devotees. Nowhere else except Vrindavan does this tattva so fully, completely developed. We read in the previous chapter how Aghasura appeared as a gigantic serpent sent by Kamsa. He was so big that when he opened his mouth, his upper lip was touching the clouds, and his lower lip was in the ground. His tongue looked like a broad, multi-lane highway. That's quite scary. When you or me see a little snake, we become afraid, yes? It's like a little cobra slithering around. How big is he? How close is his upper lip to the clouds? How wide is his tongue? But when a cobra starts slithering toward you, we become very much afraid. You can imagine Aghasura. What a fearful, I can't imagine anything more fearful. Snakes are one of the most fearful things in this world. They're the symbol of death. A snake of this proportion. And he wasn't just a little jiva snake that, is afraid of you. Because snakes, they usually, because they're afraid, they strike you. But Aghasura had the demoniac mentality. He was coming specifically to kill every single resident of Vrindavan. The gopas, the gopis, the calves, the cows, the deers, the peacocks, the birds, everyone. It was his idea, if he kills Krishna and he kills all the gopas, everyone is so attached to them that the parents, the brothers, the sisters, everybody, they will all die. They cannot live. This was a massive terrorist act that he was plotting. And there were so many gopas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Tagore explains, in numbers how many cowherd boys there were that would take out the calves with Krishna. How they all played so nicely in the pasture grounds is Krishna's inconceivable potency. And the little boy saw the big mouth of Aghasura open, and they were fearless. They were fearless not because they understood that God, Krishna, is going to protect them. They were fearless because their love for Krishna and Krishna's love for them, there was nothing else to disturb their minds. The only purpose for fear in Vrindavan is to increase people's love for Krishna. It wasn't fear for themselves. So they were saying so many things. This looks like a very beautiful playground for us to play in. And others were saying, it looks like a gigantic snake. And some started running away and saying, you can't run away. And then they all came running back. They said, even if it is a snake, let's go inside. Krishna will protect us. So they were clapping, dancing, smiling into the mouth of Aghasura. And Krishna was watching. And they were looking at Krishna like, we're going in the snake. And according to Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadeva Goswami, Krishna was bewildered. Krishna was thinking, they're going into that snake's mouth. He's come to kill them, and he's going right in their mouth. And this is kind of difficult. How do you kill somebody when all your friends are inside of them without hurting them? Yes, this is a challenge. So how is it Krishna is bewildered in this case? It's not bewildered like anybody is bewildered in this world by Maya. The bewilderment of Yoga Maya, or the Lila Shakti of the Lord, the pastime potency, is Krishna's love for his gopas, Krishna's love for his calves and their cow mothers and their fathers. He's actually really worried about them. That bewilderment was only, according to our acharyas, a beautiful ornament of how Krishna is conquered by the love of his devotees. So he went inside Aghasura. The serpent's mouth closed, tightly shut. It was complete darkness. There was no air to breathe. And all the gopas went unconscious. And all the calves, they basically died. Very special lila, because in Vrindavan, Krishna, he would kill asuras different than any other avatar. He would always maintain his simple little childlike innocence. Yes, with Putana. Putana grew. Now as Vamanadev, he grew. Yes. When Varahadev was fighting against Hiranyaksha, he was a very powerful boar. He was using his tusks, fighting with clubs. In Vrindavan, Dwarka Mathura, Krishna used his Sudarshan Chakra, his club, but in Vrindavan he never lifted a weapon. Yes. How did he kill Putana? He just a little baby. She was growing and he was just a little baby. He was just with his tiny little infant fingertips was just squeezing and sucking. That's all. So anybody who saw this was thinking, our little Krishna, he couldn't have been the one who killed Putana. It must have been because we planted banyan trees. And because we dug wells, which is pious activities, that Lord Vishnu protected our child. And Trinavarta, whirlwind, flies into Vrindavan. It was total darkness in the middle of the day. He created so much dust in everybody's eyes, nobody could see even an inch from themselves. And while everyone was completely in disarray, Trinavarta lifted Krishna, went higher and higher and higher and higher. This is a powerful asura. Krishna didn't take a club or a Sudarshan chakra. He was only 1 year old at the time, with his tiny little tender arm that Yashoda Mai would massage with oils. And it was so soft and so fragile, so vulnerable to Yashoda Mai and the gopis. He just took that little arm and squeezed Trinavarta's neck. Trinavarta's huge. And then little Krishna, his body was so, probably only weighed a few pounds. But it, without growing, it assumed a weight like the earth itself. And the asura fell to the ground and all his bones were dislocated. So in this way, Shakatasura, he was a ghostly demon. Krishna just with his little lotus foot just cried for the milk of his mother and kicked. Incredible. Well, please understand, Bakasura, Krishna, he always put himself, not always, but he would often put himself in a helpless condition to increase the anxiety of his devotees. The gopas are playing with Krishna, and then this massive bird, Bakasura, with a sharp beak, big as a mountain, swallows Krishna. Krishna's gone. Nobody sees him. He's in the body of this massive demon. You see, when Aghasura swallowed Krishna, nobody saw it. Because, the gopas and gopis, the elder ones, they didn't know what was happening. And the gopas, they were unconscious in Agha's body. But Bakasura, all the children, they all saw Krishna be swallowed of him. They were in absolute distress. And Krishna just increased the heat of his body, so it was unbearable, and Bakasura vomited Krishna. Incredible. And then with his massive beak, he tried to stab Krishna to death. And Krishna was just dancing around and he couldn't get him. And then Krishna, with his own little tiny hands, pulled his beak apart. Bifurcated, Prabhupada said. So in this way, Krishna never used weapons. Krishna never grew in size. He was always little Krishna, just somehow or other, killing these demons with Kaliya. He seemed helpless in Kaliya's coils. He really seemed like he was trapped. And then he just slipped out, didn't grow in size, just danced. Aghasura was one exception, because no one could see what was going on in that snake's mouth. He actually grew in size. It was a unique feature of this Leela. He actually grew in size to completely block any air that could go in or out of his body and suffocated Aghasura. And what really bewildered the demigods, they could see, but Krishna didn't mind them seeing because they didn't have the love of the Brijabasis. There was nothing to interfere with. They didn't see what was going on inside, but they saw from a different perspective. Aghasura was promoted to the spiritual world to participate in Krishna's pastimes. His spirit soul burst from his head, was in the sky, and then his mouth opened, and Krishna glanced at all the calves and gopas and brought them back to consciousness. Then he kind of herded all of them out, and they all went outside, and this light was still just hovering in the sky. Then Krishna came out, and it entered Krishna's body. And he was promoted to Vaikuntha, to the spiritual world. Because somehow or other, even though he was so envious, the playfulness of the gopas actually brought him some happiness at the very last moment. He was actually feeling the influence of Krishna's little cowherd boys playing so sweetly. He appreciated it. And the beauty of Krishna, he was able to appreciate it. So seeing this was extremely bewildering for the devas who were watching. But what was even more bewildering is afterward, they were really hungry, because this was quite a, it was quite a pastime. Krishna, according to our acharyas, usually just before lunch every day, some demon would come. For several reasons. Among them, their play was so enjoyable, so intoxicating, it was literally impossible for them to stop playing. And if they didn't stop playing, they couldn't eat prasad. And their mothers prepared prasad, which was full of love and devotion. It was prem prasad. So in order to give some interval in their play, an asura would come. And in the process of the asura, it really, really built up their appetites, because it was very exciting. So then when they would take prasad, they would deeply relish the Yashodamai and the other elder gopis' devotion. So on this particular day, they were very enthusiastic about prasad. And Krishna always wanted to give his devotees a nice experience. So he specially selected a place for the prasad. It was on the bank of Yamuna, in a beautiful forest with pastures around it. And Krishna sat down, and all the gopas started going in little lines and circles around him. Krishna said, "Let us take here. This is such a nice place. Smell the fragrance of the lotus flowers blossoming in the river Yamuna. And the sand is so soft and so smooth and so nice. And there's birds singing and peacocks cawing, and there's wonderful bakula trees and kadamba trees and tamal trees all around, and there's parrots and other sweet birds singing, and there's a breeze coming from the river. Let us enjoy this beautiful, beautiful experience of Vrindavan and take our prasad." And they all made different layers of circles around Krishna. And Shukadev Goswami compares Krishna to the whorl of a lotus flower, and all the gopas to be the petals of that lotus flower. So many petals. And they were joking and playing. And Krishna performed a great mystical feat at that time, because each boy was so eager to reciprocate their love with Krishna through joking and talking and just glancing and smiling at one another. And each boy was seeing that Krishna's only looking at me. He's only smiling at me. Each boy was seeing that Krishna's back was towards so many others. And everyone is just looking at Krishna, and Krishna's only looking at me. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of boys, and they're all thinking like that, and they're in circles around him. Lord Chaitanya performed that same lila. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a story when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came into Puri. Actually, he was in Puri when all the devotees from Bengal came from Navadvip, Shantipur, Kulinagram, Kulia, all these places, they came to Puri. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this one year, he met them all at Narendra Sarovar, this beautiful lake where there's a boat festival for Radha Govinda, the Vijay Utsav Murti of Jagannath. And then he took them to Jagannath's temple for kirtan and divided them into various kirtan groups. And they danced and chanted in the temple of Jagannath, and then they circumambulated with kirtan in the temple of Jagannath. And as they were all dancing and all singing, there were 7 groups with so many devotees in each group, and every single devotee, they were all in big circles around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They all were feeling that Lord Chaitanya's only looking at them. Now, this didn't make them materially proud that I'm better than all others. Actually, for a true devotee, when you get mercy, special mercy, it humbles us. We don't think, I'm getting what no one else is getting. I'm better. Rather, that Krishna is so causelessly, inconceivably merciful. He's so great. He's so loving. He's so compassionate that he's giving little me this special mercy. That makes us actually infinitely humbled by Krishna's greatness. We become proud of Krishna, not of ourselves. That is spiritual consciousness. So every devotee was thinking, Lord Chaitanya is only looking at me. His beautiful lotus eyes. Our scriptures tell us Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his face was like a full moon, golden in color. And his lotus eyes expanded practically to his ears. And they were so wide, so beautiful. Srimati Radharani's love is manifesting through his glance. And that glance is, every devotee is thinking, I'm his and he's mine. And the comparison is given. This pastime was the identical pastime of when Krishna was sitting in the bank of Yamuna, and every gopa is thinking, Krishna's only looking at me. Or during the Ras Lila, Each gopi is thinking, so many gopis and Krishna's dancing with me. Krishna's Rasa Bihari. Rasa Bihari means he's supremely the reciprocator of love. In the spiritual world, there are innumerable, countless living beings. And yet, Krishna, every flower, every blade of grass, every calf, every cow, every bird in the trees, every tree, every insect, every gopa, gopi, elder, younger, even the babies, everyone is thinking that Krishna is so personally, uniquely, intimately reciprocating with my love and giving me his love. Preparation in his little tiny hand, he went to the pastures, the forests, the mountains, the caves. He didn't see the calves anywhere. Then he came back to the place where his friends were taking prasad, and all his friends were gone. Lord Brahma had taken them all away. And Krishna, he looked like he was just an innocent little child looking for his friends. He understood immediately what Brahma had done. And he used this as an opportunity not only to show his causeless mercy on Brahma, who was kind of proud to do this to Krishna, but he took this as an opportunity to fully satisfy the desires of all the cows and mothers of Vrindavan. And he manifested himself, his amsas, as every single calf and gopa. Identical. The same ornaments, the same clothes, the same accents, the same memories, the same bodily features, the same way they walked, and perfectly the same exact relationships they had with their parents and friends. So here was Krishna in the form of unlimited calves and unlimited cowherd boys. They're all Krishna. And they come back to the village of Vrindavan, and they all start playing their horns, their buffalo horns and their flutes to announce that they're coming. And all the parents of all the children and all the cows of all the calves are so eager for their children to come. And when they arrive, the gopas, the gopis, they are embracing their children. They're feeding the children their breast milk. They're so overcome with affection. They massage their children's body with oils after they bathe them and put them clothes and feed them. In this way, it was extraordinary. Sukadeva Goswami and our acharyas explain, Prabhupada describes so beautifully, that every gopi and every cow, they had motherly love for Krishna. And inconceivably, they loved Krishna more than their own children. And they loved their children probably millions of times more than anyone in this world could love their children. It's not that they were just detached from their children because they loved Krishna. They loved their children incredibly, their mothers. But they loved Krishna even more than their own children. And without any jealousy or envy, they would see how Yashoda Mai would feed her milk to Gopal. And they were just yearning for them to feed their milk to Gopal. It was their love. To have Krishna, if only Krishna could be my child. And all the cows were thinking that. And Krishna fulfilled all of their desires for 1 full year. Krishna was drinking the milk of his devotees like nectar. And this was such a reciprocation. It was not only all the gopis and cows' desires to have Krishna as their own personal child, but because of their prem, it was Krishna's desire to have every cow and every gopi as a mother. He wanted to taste. He was thirsting for the love of each and every one of them. And that love was coming through their milk and coming through their motherly love. All the gopis, and their husbands too, the gopas, the fathers, they never put, they weren't trying to philosophically understand this. They were beyond all this philosophy stuff. They loved that year their own children as much as they loved Krishna. Something that never happened before. And another thing that was inconceivable, because it wasn't only their own child who was Krishna. Everyone's children was Krishna. They loved everyone else's child as much as they loved their own child, and they loved their own child as much as they loved Krishna. And love for Krishna is ever increasing. At every moment, their love was increasing for their child. At every moment, their love was increasing for everyone else's child. Suddenly, they loved every calf. Out of all the millions of calves in the herd of Nanda Maharaj, they loved every calf as much as they loved their own child, and they loved their own child and every calf as much as they loved Krishna. What a year that was. And when Krishna would take the calves and the gopas out in the pasturing grounds where none of the gopis or cows were even seeing, Krishna would play with all of his friends exactly identical, even nobody was even watching. Krishna would play with all of it. It's not that after they got out of view, they all went like this. Krishna would play with them with the same relationships, and they'd all have the same relationships with each other. Sometimes they'd be hitting each other for giving samosas with jasmine flowers. And it was Krishna hitting another Krishna. They all had the same relationships with each other. They all had the same relationships with Krishna. Krishna had the same relationships with them and the calves and everybody, and the boys are herding the calves. Please come. And the calf was him, and the cowherd boy was him. Incredible, transcendental pastime. And they were absorbed. On one level, Krishna was playing like an actor in all of these different forms. But another, the acting is based on such prem, such love, that the Leela Shakti or Yogamaya potency is actually, they're absorbed in the role. Krishna's absorbed in all these roles. Now, I'm a Swami, so there's certain limits to my understanding of relationships. But a mother, a loving mother, really deeply knows all the details about a little child. Yes? For that whole year, not a single mother, cow, or gopi even sensed that this is not my child. Krishna so perfectly, so meticulously made himself identical in every way to their children. The only difference was they loved their children unlimitedly more and ever increasing that unlimited. How could something unlimited be ever increasing? That's Vrindavan. It's Achintya. Unlimited love that's ever increasing for the rest of eternity. Now, time is conspicuous by its absence in the spiritual world. That means time as we know it, because in this world, time is destroying everything. In the spiritual world, time is there just to facilitate loving relationships. Krishna goes to the pasture at a certain time, he comes back, but time doesn't diminish anything. Material time diminishes everything. In the spiritual world, time increases everything. Because eternity is beyond time. And everything and everyone is eternal.